This is episode 4 of the Heavy Hockey Podcast. I'm Ryan Lotsberg, and I'm joined by Kevin McCurdy tonight. How's it going, Kevin?
I'm doing well, Ryan. How are you doing?
Excellent. And we're hoping to be joined by Patrick, the Oilers fanatic, in a little while here. We'll see what happens there. But y'all are stuck with the two of us tonight, it looks like. It's a rough night for the Oilers on Tuesday. The only game in the NHL, so the spotlight was nice and bright. Came home from a 7-game road trip, and they lost 8-3 in what was a complete debacle. So let's dig the F in with game stories. So, Kevin, give us your thoughts on what happened on Tuesday night against the Stars.
Oilers didn't show up to play. I think it's really that simple. They were losing puck battles early, and they started bleeding goals early, and goaltending didn't show up early, and the offense didn't show up early, and it was, 4-0 by the end of the first, I think.
Yep.
Pretty rough stuff.
I mean, you come home from the 7-game road trip, you're excited to be home, you sleep in your own bed, and then you get the touching pregame ceremony with the anthem, a little tribute to Robert Clark there. He's going through his battle with hairy cell leukemia. So shout out to Robert Clark and wish him all the best with that and wish him good luck and good health. But for the team to come out flat after that in those situations, like with all that going on, that's hard to comprehend. It feels like it's a pretty rough scenario.
Um, I think somebody maybe in the Heavy Hockey Network had said, well, they were coming home off of a trip, and maybe this was to be an expected performance. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?
I don't know who that might have been.
Yeah.
No,
Well, I think it's a fair comment. I think that when you come home off an extended trip, vacation, whatever, business trip, it's always the first couple days you're always lacking a couple steps as you get kind of back in the groove. They've been on the East Coast for 2 weeks, so there's something to be said. There's something to said that these are pro hockey players and they need to adapt. But these guys have played a lot of hockey in the past 6 months, and I think it's just catching up with them.
yeah, and that was my point in the heavy hockey chat. Like, I think they're exhausted. Yes, they're pro athletes, and you don't want to make excuses for guys, but it's just the reality of being a human being. When you're on the road traveling as much as they have, most travel in the league, I think they showed in the broadcast last night, they're at 54,000 kilometers traveled already, most in the league. And I mean, if you've ever been on a trip, you come home, you sleep in your own bed, and it's just like you were running on adrenaline for so long, and you finally get to shut that off, and your body is just like shuts down for however many days or weeks, depending on how long you were gone. It's a 2-hour time difference, so it's not like there's jet lag involved here, but it was a long road trip. It's 7 games in 11 days with all that travel. The reality of it is it takes a toll on your body. I don't care if you're a pro athlete or not. So I think that played a role. Does it excuse it? No, they got to be better. Absolutely. But I think that is a big part of it. And you're right. It's not just the last 6 months, it's the last 2 point something years, 2.25 years now. Right? We got 2 long runs to the cup finals, playing hockey into late June both years. And the travel they've had so far this season has been ridiculous. So a little fatigue should be expected. And I wasn't expecting a whole heck of a lot, but at the same time, I was expecting more than 8-3.
Well, I mean, it's an improvement over what, 9-1 or whatever it was against the Avalanche. So I mean, I
Yeah,
guess we're
yes,
making
progress.
progress if you wanna look at it with a little bit of a fun filter on it.
I mean, it was looking up a little bit at the end of the road trip. They gave 2 inspired efforts, one against Tampa and one against Florida. But it feels odd to say this because the games are so spread apart, but 2 of their last 3 home games were just absolute shellings,
Mm.
right?
Uh,
Colorado 9-1, then Columbus with that crazy comeback win, and the next one's Dallas.
yeah, and I like. There's no doubt this game was a bit of a shit show, right? Like again, they were losing board battles really early. The first one behind the net with Ekholm and Bouchard, and they and you gotta have a save occasionally too, right? Like there's a lot of problems with this team, and I think it starts, kind of from the top down. Like this is a team that is struggling in basically every segment that you can evaluate, right? Like there's nothing really going right for them, except for potentially the power play, right? And it's that's a tough spot to win hockey games from, especially with, how the Oilers don't really draw that many penalties these days.
It feels like that's been the case for a few years now, but last year almost felt like the anomaly year when they were really strong 5-on-5 and the special teams weren't as good. Because in the Woodcroft era and even a little before that, it was they lived and died with the power play. Right? We had a historical power play, 32.4% the one year, 22-23, I believe it was, and that was how they won games. Right? But now we're kind of back to that. Power play is thriving near the top of the league. I haven't checked where they are lately, but they were second for a while there. And 5-on-5 has just dried up completely.
Uh, I don't know if it's execution or if it's just overall coaching strategy or what, but I am so sick of these like dump pass breakouts. Like, do something else, anything else. Like what was it? The early in the first period, I think it was Bouchard, and it might have been Bouchard, or it might have been somebody else, but they tried the same breakout play through either the middle or the boards off the ice with the tap in, and it failed like 5 times in a row, and they just don't have anything else to use, and they're not set up to use a different play. So like, people will get on Bouchard for turning the puck over in that situation, but I don't honestly know what he's supposed to do with it, right? Like, um, he has to have support from his forward core, and they have to play again, sort of hinting at the goaltending situation. Like, they're not worried that everything is going to come back the other direction with the force of 1,000 bricks, right? Like, that's it's pretty clear that they're playing with some kind of set of handcuffs, and in addition to the travel woes and whatever else, and that's just causing real issues for them. And even once Pickard got in that game was already over, right? So um it's no Stuart Skinner's in a pretty rough spot right now. I don't think that I would want to be him at the moment. He's fighting for his job, and he's fighting for his place on his home team, and we can say we can frankly talk shit about him all day long, but the reality is this is the position that he was put in by the management group of this team, and they've done not a lot to rectify that over multiple seasons now. And it's I empathize for him whilst holding him accountable at the same time, if that makes sense.
Percent. And we got to remember, like, if we're all passionate fans, we want to see our team win. We're all frustrated that they're not winning, but we're dealing with human beings here, as I talked about with the travel,
Yep.
right? I feel bad for Stuart Skinner, the person. Seems like a decent dude. And same with Calvin Pickard, very well respected inside and outside the room. But at the same time, you got to call a spade a spade. If it's not
Yep.
good enough, then it's not good enough. And last night, or I guess it was last night, just wasn't good enough.
It was 2 goals saved below expected before he got pulled, and, I think the number actually got higher to it than that at one point before the end of the period, and then, he was able to make a couple of saves, I think, and bring that number back, but he really struggled. His defensive pairings in front of him really struggled. Ekholm didn't have a particularly good night. Bouchard wasn't a lot better. Kulak struggled at times. Like, This is not a well-oiled machine like we're used to seeing. In fact, it's quite obviously not the same hockey club even, right? Like, these are not teams that are playing the same as any of the previous iterations of themselves, and, normally they would deal with nights like last night by turning the offense up to 11 and outscoring their mistakes, and they just can't do that this year, right? So, I
They
either
don't
have to
have
figure
that.
out. Hmm?
No, I was saying they don't have that in them right now.
Yeah, yeah. There was a question here in the chat. Has the group turned out the coach? And the show, yeah. I don't know is the answer to that question. I don't know if it's that they've tuned him out or what they're doing isn't working. I don't get the sense that um, it's that they've stopped listening entirely, but this is having a crisis of consciousness of who they are. Um, and that goes beyond just coaching. It goes beyond just one or two players. They as a group are not quite sure what their identity is this year. And I even think that that includes Knobloch a little bit because this is not, this team is a shell of what it was last season, or even especially the season before that. Um, I don't know. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's the head coach. I don't know if it's the changes they've made at the assistant coaching level, whether there's a lack of buy-in there or what's going on. But it sure seems to me that whatever they're doing isn't working, and whether it's not listening or the execution or whatever, I don't know if they're going to figure it out in time to for this season or not.
And it's one of those questions where you're not in the room, so it's tough to
Yeah.
really accurately answer that question. And we can only go off of what we see. I see a team that's frustrated and just isn't executing as well as we know they can. And I still think fatigue has a lot to do with that. I also think that seven new forwards have a lot to do with that as well. The guys who have been here before are also not playing up to their caliber, but that's a lot of new faces to integrate, especially when you consider four of those faces early in the season had a combined 20 games of NHL experience. Right,
Yeah,
Savoy,
and
Howard, Tomashik, and
I,
Phil.
I understand why the vets like, sorry, why the GMs like veteran group, leaders, because they can sort of drop in and just play hockey. And there's a lot more hand holding with the young kids at this level. But as an organization, we have not looked after our youth in the way that we should have. And now or at least up until this season, we're one of the oldest teams in the league. And if you want to stretch that window, we need to get some of these young kids going at the NHL level. Like, you have to play them eventually, or you have to have the assets to get them after other teams have developed them. And I don't think the Oilers are in that position. So um, I think they just need to keep at it, keep giving them ice time. There's no better time than October, November, December to get these kids some real NHL ice and experience. I'm glad Ike Howard's now in the AHL making decent point totals night over night and playing 20 minutes a night and really getting some experience. I think that has been important to will it be important to him? And I think it's important that Savoy continues to get the opportunities that he's getting in the top six. I think that they should go back to Hyman and McDavid and Savoy and keep rolling with that line for a bit. I think Savoy has the ability to play at that pace. It's just about how do they figure out their identity as a group. And I don't know if it is a room issue or if it's a chemistry issue or what, but something is not quite right now, and they're a little out of step with each other, and it shows up in a big way every single game.
On the identity thing, like I view identity as when you think of a team, it's what do you think they do well? And Knobloch said earlier in the year it was McDavid and Draisaitl. I mean, they're faces of the franchise, but I don't necessarily see that as a team identity. That's something totally different. But what does this team do well right now? I think they have a lot of guys who have versatile skill sets. Like our defense, they're all big, they're all fairly mobile, they're all decent at moving the puck for the most part. All right, that's what we're trying. That looks like the mold that we're trying to build. Up front, it's gotten a little bit smaller this year with guys like Mangiapane and Savoy being in there, but it's all guys that offer a little bit of checking, a little bit of offense here there. It's they don't do one thing particularly well. It's just they're well rounded. And that might be where your identity crisis comes from. Like they're not a team that's going to run you through the boards or bully you. They're not fast enough to be a high flying, super skilled team. They're somewhere in the middle, and they gotta figure that out. And I don't know if it's this roster that'll figure that out. Stan Bowman's got to figure that out and how he wants to mold this team going forward. So that's where I think the identity is going to come from. But the coaching thing, I mean, there's been a lot about is this a coaching issue or is this a player execution issue? And even the media has been getting into it this week with a lot of the coaches and the players. Like Knobloch's been asked about it. Jason Gregor's been asking everybody on the roster that he gets a face to face with about it. And to a man, they're all saying that the system hasn't changed. And Knobloch went out of his way to say that teams that go as far as they have the last couple of years, or teams that have the same staff in place for a long time, they don't generally make a lot of changes systematically.
Yeah,
So I,
that's fair. I do give some credence to Jack Hahn's analysis of it, which is that it's cool to say that you haven't changed the system, but when you look at the video, that tells a little bit of a different tale. And it doesn't matter if it's an execution thing or a slippage thing or what it is, but what does matter is the results are different than last year, and they haven't been able to figure out why or get a handle on why and improve that execution enough to turn those results around. Where historically, they've slid for a bit at the beginning of the season, but they've gotten their boots under them and away they went. And that just seems to be a lot more difficult this year for whatever reason. So it's hard not to wonder if there is a systems change, whether it's as simple as an accountability issue or a standards issue, if that makes sense. I know the Oilers last year, the players talked about playing to a certain standard a lot, and I've heard a little bit less of that language this year. So I don't know. Um, you know, I you can only give so much credit to the post game interviews because a lot of it is fluff, right, from both sides, both the questions and the answers. But like there is there's a real issue with accountability right now, whether that is intentional or not, I don't know. But the accountability is what's going to drive any sort of exodus from this current malaise that they seem to find themselves in.
for sure. And talking about the Jack Han or Han threads, like the first one got a lot of praise, and I honestly didn't quite understand why. All he said was the team's not very connected. I thought that was a pretty obvious take, but
Mhm.
his second thread was much better. It was much more detailed. It showed us some great examples of
Yeah.
what has been happening, but he still cherry picked a few situations, and especially
Yeah.
the ones against the Panthers with the strong side winger coming low. Like you have to play that way against Florida because they make you go through two layers of defense on the strong side. Because not only are they aggressive with that strong side winger, they pinch the strong side D man up to cover the blue line of the in the offensive zone. It's a lot. It's different against Florida. Like the strong side winger has to come low and support. That hasn't been happening a whole lot in other games. Um, but it's just his narrative is saying that just because something doesn't match up with what he sees, suddenly the organization's lying, right? What the
Yeah.
organization said didn't match up with his observation, so now everyone's lying because it doesn't match his narrative. That was the part that kind of got me. So like respect to Jack, I understand he's got a ton of coaching and tactics expertise, and because even apparently worked with Paul McFarland in Toronto. It's like he's a mind that's worthy of respect. I just don't necessarily agree with his assessment here. I strictly think this is a player execution issue and a roster quality issue.
Yeah. No, that's fair. The roster quality is definitely a concern. Like we've lost Corey Perry, we've lost, Connor Brown. You lost a lot of the people that were able to score goals in weird situations or necessary situations, and um, more importantly, I think you've lost some of the spice in the room, right? Like you've lost your Evander Kane's, and it's pretty obvious based on how Kane is doing in Vancouver that that was probably a good deal to make. But when you lose your key folks to, um, you know, whatever trades to free agency to whatever, then you have to fill some of that personality hole. And I do think that sometimes there's a little bit too much of Bouchard's laissez-faire attitude in that room, and a little more Connor Clattenburg might be what's needed, if that makes sense. Like, there's nothing
No, I
wrong
hear
with
you.
having a guy that runs around like a bull in a china shop, as long as he's pretty smart about it and doesn't take a bunch of stupid penalties. That penalty he took yesterday was fairly marginal in my view, but um, certainly not like a dumb penalty in the scheme of things. It was just unfortunate luck more than anything else. But I just think that personality is important. Having fun playing the game is important, and to me, it doesn't really seem like they're having fun right now. And
Mm.
I completely understand that from a competitive view. When you've lost a bunch of games and things aren't really going your way, then it's really hard to get in the swing of it. But this team has done better when they're visually having fun playing the game, and that has been missing this year to an extent.
And I fully agree with that, and I think the personality aspect is definitely important to both. A little bit of it on the ice, but I'm talking more in the room. And
Yeah,
again, I'm not in the room, so can't comment too much. But think about what this team has lost. Corey Perry, big time leader, a lot very well respected in the room. And Connor
yeah,
Brown, like just watching a lot of the oil drop episodes from last playoff run, like he's a guy that seemed to fit in very well with the team. Um, Kaner may or may not have. There's some rumored issues in the room, as always with Kane. But you can go back a year further than that. Evan Bouchard lost his buddies Warren Fogle and Ryan McLeod, right? So they're pro athletes. Winning is the most important thing. You got to have the best players available. You got to make some business decisions sometimes. But the impact on the room of having lost all of these important integral parts of the social area or the social aspect of the room, I think we could be seeing a little bit of that too. That could be causing a little bit of this malaise. It's a lot of new guys to work in, and like I'm not sitting here saying there's a bunch of hatred and rivalry going on with a lot of the new guys in the room, but it just hasn't gelled the same way that the other groups have, and maybe that takes time. And maybe they got to go through this adversity before they get there. But I think it plays a factor. I think even Hyman missing most of the season so far. Nuge has been out for 6 weeks. Nuge and Kapanen weren't on this trip. They're part of it, right?
yeah. Kapanen in particular. Like I get that Nuge is a leader in the room. Don't get me wrong, but Kapanen brings a little bit of that ferocity that it's not just about hitting guys, right? It's about personality, and I think bringing in Clattenburg was from that perspective a good choice. I'm not in love with the message that it sends to the Jarventis and um, some of the other guys down in the AHL, Samansky, Hudson, etc. But what this team needed was a spark and some personality, and those guys need to keep developing, playing 20 plus minutes a night. Whereas Clattenburg is always going to be, you know, a 7 to 15 minute a night kind of guy. I think once he makes it, and I think he'll make it eventually. So, it may not be viewed as good development, but I think the Oilers needed to change something, and they had a number of injuries and their salary construction left them with fairly limited options. So that was the other reason I think Clattenburg was recalled over one of those other guys.
No, and this is just me off the top of my head. I remember before anything happened with Philp and Lazar, they had $212,500 of cap space. They put Philp on LTIR. They brought Clattenburg up. I think those two salaries cancel each other out. So they could have maybe utilized another 212.5 and brought up somebody else if they really wanted to. But I think the Clattenburg call up sent a message not just to the Oilers, but throughout the organization. Like they need a little bit more of that, right? Bowman is trying to make this a more skilled organization. You can see that with the prospects he's brought in and some of the signings that he's made from overseas, like your Quinn Hudsons, your Carfagnas, right? Your Atrolepinins of the world. But yeah, a guy like Clattenburg comes in and did what he does, or it did. It brought some energy. It was the only bright note in an otherwise terrible game last night.
Yeah. No, that when he got that goal, I thought that there was a non-zero chance that they were going to rally and turn it around, and that just didn't materialize. A little bit concerned
Yeah,
about what happened to Trent Frederick with that shot block. I'm kind of concerned that I hope he didn't break his foot because that would be a brutal setback with the ankle injuries that he's had up until now.
yeah. I don't know which foot it was. I don't know if it's the same one that he hurt last year or not, but that's definitely a tough break, and hopefully it's not long with Freddie. Like, I feel bad for the guy. But having said that, he's been kind of terrible, and I don't mind seeing some other guys get an opportunity and him getting a little bit of a break. I don't mind seeing that at all.
No, that's true. I do think that it's fair to say that he's had a couple of closer to better games right up to leading into this injury. I thought he was way more noticeable the past two games. I know that that's not good enough in a 25 game sample size, but I did think that he was starting to show some signs of improvement. So hopefully his injury isn't severe. I think that with his injury, though, there's a really good chance that Connor Clattenburg's not going anywhere, right? Like, um, he's sort of the direct replacement for that in terms of what they got right now, and absent from bringing, I don't even know who else they would bring up to fill that role. Um,
The answer is nobody. I think they played that card already with Clattenburg.
yeah, I'm just saying if Clatty got hurt, like who else do they have that is kind of that hard nosed. Like it's an archetype that they've needed to add to the organization for years, and the faster they can get him up to NHL speed, the better. Because having a bull in a china shop really uh, makes guys think twice when they're out on the ice, right? And that kind of fear causes mistakes, and those mistakes are what ultimately ended up ending with Clattenburg's first goal. He caused that initial turnover by throwing a hit. And yeah, it took a few seconds for that play to play out, but the whole thing was started because he threw the body. And he's still learning how to throw the body in the NHL in a way that's not going to get himself into trouble. But I think he's been pretty reserved and done a pretty good job, all things considered.
Yeah, I think he understands the assignment. He's clearly trying to run guys, which is great. It's like a little bit of what we need. We need somebody to go in and give us some energy through physical play. But on that play in particular, where he scored, delivers the hit, keeps the puck alive. Then what does he do? Goes to the net, gets himself
Yep.
in position, shows great composure in front, good hands in front, and scores a big goal. Well, big for him anyway.
Big for him, anyways. I love that some people were getting up his ass about this celebration. Like, buddy, it's his first NHL goal. Just let
Yeah.
him celebrate. It doesn't matter if it's 26 to nothing, right? Like,
Yeah, I don't like hockey culture for that reason. That's one of the. There's a few reasons I don't like hockey culture, but that's one of them. Let people have some fun. This is first AHL goal. Let the kids
yeah.
celebrate.
Yeah, you worked your whole life to get to this moment. Like, that's something that he only gets to do once. And I would say the same thing for literally any team player anywhere in the league on any team. Like, that's just how it should be, right? Um, let the when you put that much of yourself into something, and like these guys put thousands and thousands of hours to getting as good at the sport as they are, from the plugs all the way on up to the tippiest toppiest superstars. So they get that first goal, let them enjoy it. They've given everything that they've had to be in that moment. No, it wasn't over the top either, to Lav's point, right? Like I didn't find it was an over the top celebration at all, other than the score was a little bit lopsided already. But that was the only reason that um, anybody sort of had an issue with it. I just let them enjoy the moment.
Yeah, and hockey culture. There's certain times where you're supposed to be sad and mad, and there's certain times where you're allowed to be excited, right? Like, I think he made the score 4-1. Like,
Mhm.
it's still early in the second period. Your team might still have a chance, right? The team's pretty flat. Like, you got to do something to wake the boys up, and that was as good a thing as you could do to wake a team up than as anything, right? Not just score your first NHL goal, just get that excited about it, get the crowd that excited about it. And that should have sent some shockwaves through the bench and woke some guys up, but didn't work out that way, unfortunately. But I think he did the exact right thing there.
No, no, I'm happy to see him around. I like the departure and draft logic that they used to pick that kid. I think if you're picking at least a defenseman and some kind of hard-nosed guy that's a long shot in the 7th round and or 5th round or 6th round or whatever, and a goalie every single draft year. That's a good way to keep things going. And obviously, you're going to use your higher picks on some higher octane forwards for the most part, unless something really juicy runs past you. Like Jesper Wallstat, for example. That's oh, sorry. Uh,
No, that's bringing up some PTSD for me. And we've got some questions and some desire to move on to some goalie chat here. So
all
why
right,
don't
all
we
right.
do this week in heavy hockey? Because I did a piece on Wallstedt this week. So let's run that. So Kevin kind of alluded to the Jesper Wallstedt situation. Kid was unbelievable in November. I think he got 3 shutouts, like 6-0-2 or something like that. Unreal numbers so far. Fantastic start to his breakout season here. And most of you watching know the story by now. 2021 draft, Oilers are off 20th overall, and they decide to trade back to get Xavier Bourgault and an extra pick, which turned into Luka Munzenberger. And then Wild chose Jesper Wallstedt, who was most fans' choice from an Oilers perspective. You take Wallstedt, then he may not have been ready right then, but as we're seeing it play out now, he's ready right when Connor and Leon are in the middle of their primes, and we've come off of 2 Stanley Cup Finals berths, and he's ready to help now. And right, like he'd solve a problem for us right now. But nope, we were too impatient. You don't take a goaltender in the first round. He's not going to help you now, so you might as well not even bother with the pick. Take the forward who's going to be ready sooner. Blah 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 blah. Look how well that turned out.
Yeah. And every
This
fan within
was
1,000 kilometers was screaming the same thing,
yep,
for weeks at a time before and afterwards.
absolutely.
I don't understand why you would make that decision like that. And then,
It was
to add insult to injury, the pick that they needed to be sure was right turns out to be pretty much a bust. He's sitting in Ottawa's farm team right now, and I sort of doubt that he's ever going to be anything more than that.
nope,
So
and Munzenberger is playing in the second league in Germany right now.
yeah, yeah, and I don't think that there was some signs of life with him, but I think that that's not going to go anywhere either.
Yeah,
It's
no,
just really
definitely not.
frustrating. Like it's a huge organizational swing and miss. We can talk about Tyler Wright and Ken Holland's decision makings in the draft all you want, but there's what one player left in the system that those guys drafted. Just one. Maybe
Two.
it's two. Maybe it's two.
It's Petrov.
And
There's somebody
Aki?
else. No, Aki was
Was Aki
Aki was a pricey pick, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe I'm wrong. It might be Aki. Aki might have been the other one. No, now that I'm thinking of it, it was Aki because they
yeah.
both started in the ECHL this year again. Anyway, that's besides the point. But the other point that I brought up in my article was it just kind of shows or serves as a lesson that even though we have Connor and Leon and we need championships now, right? There's room for future focused thinking, right? Back then, you're thinking take the forward because he's going to be ready sooner. The goaltender is not going to be ready to help right now, so that's a wasted pick. Or let's trade all our picks and
Oh, it was
prospects
a
for
wasted
immediate
pick.
help.
It was a
It turned
wasted
out to
pick.
be
All
it was a wasted pick. Um, so all I'm getting at is while there's a desire to win now while we have Connor and Leon, sometimes you got to have the future focused mindset and strategy because you want these guys to be around for a while and you got to be competitive for the next 8 years or so while we have Draisaitl at the very least. And you got to prove to McDavid that you can compete for the 8 year term there if you want him to sign further than the 2 years that we have him for after this one. So sometimes you need to take the long term approach, even if it's painful in the short term. So, with that in mind, let's talk about some goaltending rumors. So, Jordan Binnington has been in the news recently. I think Nick Kyprios put out a piece yesterday suggesting that Binnington and the Oilers might be a good match. And today the news came down from Kevin Weeks saying that he's heard suggestions that the Oilers might be interested in Tristan Jarry. So, Kevin, what are your thoughts on those two? And do you see any other feasible options?
So I think Elliott sort of tamped down the expectations on the Binnington rumors just because he's sort of quote unquote said that there was trade protection at play there, and he felt like the Oilers were likely on the list and would require Binnington's approval to waive to. I think that would be a good change of scenery for him to come here. I know he can play in a big game, but he's been pretty bad this year too. Like he is dead last or second last, maybe in the league in goals saved above expected. Um, you know, just struggling mightily, and we could say that there's been defensive issues on the Blues as well potentially, but have a hard time imagining they're as severe as the ones the Oilers are experiencing at the moment. So I think that Binnington may be one of the best available options. um some stranger is right, they know, everybody knows how bad the Oilers have needed a goalie for 2+ years, and it's been something we haven't addressed because everybody knows how bad we need a goalie. So at a certain point we need to rip the band-aid off. um I wonder if there is some juice to that Tristan Jarry rumor. I'm not super thrilled about that. He would be down my list a little bit. I think he's capable of being a decent enough goalie, but stats aside, I think he's kind of Stuart Skinner adjacent in terms of skill set and vulnerabilities and whatnot. And having a goaltender that's extremely strong in rush defense and east-west movement, I think is more important to this team, or is the most important two things that they need to be focused on. Um, I don't know who's available that fits that. And I don't know if there's somebody that's, hiding in the rough that's ready to break out. We talk about Michael DiPietro or Nico Dawes for New Jersey. Like those are guys they could have picked up on waivers, and some for some reason didn't, because they bet on the current pairing under their new goaltending coach to see if they could pull out of it. But that clearly hasn't worked, right? Like we're still in the same place that we've been arguably for 2 consecutive years. And again, this isn't slander against those guys. This is an organizational management decision to keep running it back with the same goaltending. those guys can show up to play, and hopefully it's to the best of their ability. And if they're struggling, that I guess happens. Goaltending is voodoo. But the organization has a responsibility to make a change here at this point because what they're doing now isn't working. Um, I think the most likely scenarios that you're going to see one of Bennington or Tristan Jari. Those seem to be the two front running names. I don't know how they make that deal work from a money perspective. I think they're going to have to look at shipping out Brett Kulak to get it done, which is kind of an unfortunate side effect. I completely understand that Brett Kulak has had the worst year that I've seen him play as an Oiler, and I have a feeling that might be because it's pretty obvious that the left side is plugged up with four people, and he's probably the fourth. So unless they're planning to move Ekholm, which I strongly doubt because they just signed him to a new deal, and unless they're planning to move Nurse, which again, trade protection, I see that as fairly unlikely, despite what the rumors say. Um, I think they're left with pretty limited options. They either have to go and get somebody who is sitting in the weeds waiting to go. Again, there's a few guys in the AHL that, you could take a gamble on. I'm not sure Connor Ingram is who I would take a gamble on yet, and that's no disrespect for him. I just want to give him more time to cook and get up to speed and just be really ready to face the limelight that Edmonton tends to be, especially on goaltending. So I don't know. DiPietro or somebody like that would probably be my choice, but I expect them to take maybe a bit of a bigger swing than that with the struggles that they're having.
And I think you touched on a lot of the realities that are facing the Oilers here, and I'll touch on the cap situation in just a second. And you did touch on Binnington and his lateral ability and his play against the rush. And I saw somewhere that he's actually pretty good against the rush. His numbers jive with our system that way. That's the one pro I have for Binnington. And obviously the other is Stanley Cup pedigree, Four Nations pedigree. But I don't think that's the right move here. And I wanted to use my article as a segue into this because I don't think that I'm trying to see how old getting a 32-year-old goaltender and spending a lot of assets to do it because you're going to have to not only for the brand appeal but probably some salary cap retention because he's a $6 million cap hit. I just don't think it's worth it for a 32-year-old goaltender. There's plenty of info out there that suggests goalies hit their peak in their mid to late 20s, like 27 to 29, and their save percentage can hold true into their 30s, but like their actual peak is around 27 to 29. And that's kind of where we're at with Stu Skinner at 27 years old. Tristan Jarry's 28. That's the same sort of deal. Connor Ingram, 28. And no, he's still not ready yet. He's had a couple of decent starts, but I think his last outing was not as good, if I'm remembering correctly. But
I
Ingram
think the
was
team
awesome.
struggled more the last outing too, to be fair. Like
Yeah. And as the Oilers did in front of Stu and Calvin last game, right? So there's something to be said for that, but I digress. It's like I'm not thinking that Ingram's the answer right now, but
no,
I'm
and I
with
think it
Kevin
would
in
be
saying
disrespectful. I think it would be disrespectful to even consider him to be the answer. I don't think that's fair to him as the player.
not at
Never
all,
mind. Yeah.
not at all. Given what he's gone through and where he's at and where he needs to go, still like he needs to be in the AHL, and that's where he should stay. But I'm with you in thinking that it needs to be a guy that's waiting in the weeds, who hasn't had his best years ahead, or he's still got his best years ahead of him, right? I don't want a guy who's been there, done that. Look where that mentality has gotten us, right? Bob Nicholson, Ken Holland, Peter Chiarelli. I'm talking about executives here, but the concept holds true for players too. You spend a bunch of money on guys who are past their prime and whose best years are behind them, and you expect them to bring that success over, but it doesn't translate, right?
No.
It rarely does. So just as I didn't want to have Stan Bowman as the GM because I wanted a younger guy, like someone back in the Holland hiring. Like I wanted someone like a Kelly McCrimmon or a Bill Zito, and look what they've done, right? They've had their best years were in front of them. So that's the mentality I want to have with a goaltender right now. And with the Oilers cap situation, I don't think they can afford to spend more than $1 million of cap hit on a goaltender. So, given the names and the teams that have been floated, Elliot Friedman says the Pittsburgh Penguins have 4 goaltenders right in their system right now. 2 of them are up there with the big club. Artur Silov's 24 years old and not going anywhere. That's a guy I would have been interested in the summer, but it didn't happen that way. They still have Jari. It's going to be a tough thing to move. And they got those 2 goalies are playing well for them. They're in a wild card spot. So why do they want to disrupt that? Right. So I'm thinking they might move one of the other two. And Joel Blomqvist is the guy that I'm thinking about. Had a little bit of NHL experience last year. Had 15 games. The numbers don't look so great on him, but his last 2
He had an
AHL
injury.
seasons have been fantastic. That's what I read. Like he had a shutout in the AHL his last start here, which is part of a conditioning stint because he's been hurt most of the season here. He started the year on season opening injured reserve, according to Puckpedia. So that tells me that he has been dealing with some kind of injury. But left-handed catching goalie or right-handed catching goalie, he's backwards. 23 years old. I think he's shown he's too good for the AHL. I think he's ready for a promotion. He just doesn't have that NHL experience behind him yet. What better way to get it to him than in a tandem with Stuart Skinner right now?
The good thing about all these dudes too is that they're kind of in the $1 million range, just like Pickard is. So like, I don't want to get rid of Pickard from the organization if at all possible, right? Like
Yeah,
he is the Devon Shore of goaltenders, right? He's reliable. He shows up when he needs to. He's a great presence in the locker room. Um, his career is catching up with him, but that doesn't mean that I want the person to be off the Edmonton Oilers. If they can find a way to get him to the AHL, and I know that that's, some people say, well, let him play in the pros, but I have a hard time believing, based on the sample size this year, that any other team isn't going to do exactly the same thing with him. So if he's going down to the AHL, I would really like it to be with Bakersfield. I think he would be a great presence there. Um, it's uh it's a tough situation, but there's a bunch of guys down in the A right now. Like, to speaking of Pittsburgh, like you look at Sergei Murashov, for example, who's also lighting it up, right? Like 1.73 goals against average and 931 save percentage. Sebastian Casa from Detroit, right? Michael DiPietro, he's got 600 minutes and he's 1.8 goals against and 942. Like, there are some guys, and he's 26, I think. Like, there's some guys that are primed to take the step. I'd really honestly pisses me off that those guys went through waivers and the Oilers didn't even take a swing at it. Like, even if they ended up waving at him in the end, they would have just gone back to the previous team or somebody else would have claimed him, right? Like, I don't know.
yeah,
That kind of stuff, when you don't have to spend assets to take a look at somebody, that stuff drives me mental.
I agree with you. And like at the start of the year, I kind of get where the team was coming from as well. Like you got 2 goaltenders who've taken you to the Cup Finals the last couple of years. You're bringing a new goaltending coach because you acknowledge that there's a problem and they need to improve the goaltending position a little bit. Cap strapped because Leon Draisaitl, Evan Bouchard, $12.4 million in combined raises when the cap only went up 7.5. They've had to shed a lot of money, and so you got goaltending that can get you by. You deal with it. Having said that, though, where we are, it carrying 3 is not the worst idea. If you get a guy like Blomqvist who's 886, 667, same cap hit as Savoy, I want Savoy in the lineup. I'm just using that as a number. But you take Lazar, Philp, somebody, right? Send him down. You're
Lazar
carrying one less forward. You're carrying 3 goaltenders. Eases the load on all of them. You can ease Blomqvist into it. You don't have to deal with as many Skinner and Picard appearances. You just need something to get you through this season. Because honestly, I don't think this is the pig to slap some lipstick on this year to try to squeeze a Stanley Cup win out of it. Because I just don't think the roster's there. It's a transitional year. We're bringing some young guys in. It's necessary pain. I think it's one step back to take 2 steps forward. And I think they also need the reset from an asset spending standpoint, right? They can't keep putting stuff on the credit card and expect not to pay the piper at some point, right? We've got 4 picks to our name in this draft. We've already spent one in the 27 draft. Well, moved back, so now we have 2 fifths instead of a fifth and or fourth and a fifth. Right? At some point, you got to take a breath and just recoup some assets. Like yeah, we're putting some people in the organization that can go scout and recruit from Europe and in the NCAA. But there's a reason those guys are available as amateur free agents. They just don't have the same clout as guys that are getting drafted. So as much as we want immediate help, we want to trade all our picks for immediate gratification. I don't think that's the right answer, and especially not this year.
No, I would tend to agree, and especially as we've watched, guys like Mangiapane being underwhelming, right? Like he doesn't have trade protection next year, so why or not? He has some, but it's a list rather than being a no move clause outright. And I just like again, no disrespect, but I just don't feel like he's a fit with our system. Our batting average on July 1st has been pretty poor the past couple seasons. Almost time to consider locking Stan Bowman and Jeff Jackson's phones up for a day, so we're not missing out next year. But I don't know. I think you're right. The more I'm watching this team, the more I'm feeling like last year's roster was a step back from the previous roster, and I think this roster is a step back from last year's roster. And you know, that's not to say they're not going to go back or that they don't have the capability to make a good, strong run here. No, that's not the case. I'm just seeing what the tea leaves are telling me in front of me, and that this team honestly kind of needs a little bit of a breather. And if we adjust our expectations a little bit as fans with that in mind, it becomes a whole lot more enjoyable to watch. I know everybody has super high expectations and they want to see the Oilers lift the cup, but I'm not sure it's going to happen this year. And that is no disrespect to these guys. They have given it everything that they've had for, 3 straight years now. And sometimes you just got to sit back and retool and recoup some assets and build some equity and give your guys a chance to get healthy and still take the best swing that you can, but don't empty the cupboards.
Yeah, and the other part of this is, let's say you go and make a move for Bennington, right? Something's got to come off the roster to appease St. Louis's need to get fair value for Bennington and to make the money work,
Yeah.
right? So if you do that now, you're taking away from your roster to get better somewhere else. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. But if you wait till the summer, you have the cap space to add to the
Yeah,
team.
there's 18 million bucks, and if you can move some other stuff around, then that's not a bad spot to be either. I'm not particularly convinced that they'll re-sign Rico next year, for
I don't
example.
think they should.
I don't think that there's a good chance that they'll re-sign Brett Kulak either, just because of how stacked up that left side is. Unless
Yeah,
they
I
have
think you're totally
something that
right.
I just 3 million bucks or 2.75 million bucks. I love Brett Kulak. He's been an absolute horse for us for multiple seasons. Um, I don't see how this continues to work like this. It's pretty clear that they are struggling on the right side a little bit, and the left side is overstocked. And when they move the left to the right, that's not working very well. So I just there's 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 too many question marks right now. I think it's really that simple.
Yeah, like I don't think Kulak is long for this team, unfortunately, especially if he keeps playing the way he is. I think you're right. Like they signed Jake Wallman to a big extension. They signed Matthias Ekholm for another 3 years. You still have Darnell Nurse for a bunch of time. And we're stuck with him for at least 2 more years until his full no trade becomes a modified no trade. So that leaves Kulak hanging in the wind a little bit. I think he's 32, if I'm not mistaken. So like, that's one way where you can make your team a little bit younger by getting yourself a young puck moving, hopefully right-handed D. I'd even settle for a lefty. You can get by with Wallman on the right side, but I agree with you in saying that's not ideal. So I don't know if Kulak is part of a package going the other way to get a goaltender, or maybe that's just a long-term play. You move Kulak to bring in somebody like a Bo Byram from Buffalo, for example. That's a guy that's a situation that's been waiting to pop for a couple of years. He's always in the rumor mill. Maybe a goalie comes from Buffalo and Kulak is involved and Byram is involved and other assets from the Oilers are involved. I'm just spitballing here, but I think you're right. Like if I'm looking at expendable assets from the roster, it's Kulak and like maybe Henrique, but he's got a no move, so he's probably not going anywhere.
He's flexed on. It's been pretty well known that he's used that no move too. I believe like he
He
uh
wants to be here.
he wants to be here, and I respect that. You know, he signed an agreement to be here. That's fair. That's his right. But that is not getting a lot done from a points perspective right now. I was gonna say it'd be real handy to have a guy like I don't know Michael Kesselring right about now, but he's having a bit of a rough time in Buffalo. Although I think Buffalo is where defense go to die in a way, so it's
Oh, and he was decent in Utah, right?
yeah. He has 82 games played last year, 7 goals, 22 assists, 29 points, +4 on Utah, right?
And again,
And
that's
we
another
threw him in.
example of
We
what I was
threw
talking about. We
Yeah,
threw
but
him
we
in
threw him
as
in as an afterthought
Nick
on a
Bukestad.
friggin' rental of Nick Bugstad. Like
Yeah,
the deal
immediate
was great.
gratification.
Everybody was like Holland fleece, and then 2 hours after the deal is like, oh yeah, by the way, they threw in Michael Kesselring, and it went from like an A+ trade to like a D- basically instantly. Like
Yeah, that was
you
awful.
don't
That's just another example of what I was talking about earlier. Instant gratification at the cost of the future. But well, the future comes pretty quick, and when you got Leon Draisaitl on your team who's committed to you for 19 years,
no.
you can afford to have a little bit of future focused thinking because you want to be competitive for all of those 19 years. That's where my frustration lies, not just
Yeah.
in things that Ken Holland did, but in how Oilers fans on X think a lot of the time. The commentary I see, it's you can't waste another year of Connor and Leon, and yeah, you got to
They're
go
not
all
gonna they're
in
kinda
right
not gonna
now.
have a choice. They're kinda not gonna have a choice though. Like they're at the point now where the cupboard's pretty empty. The talent, like the upcoming group is fairly light. They again to what you said before, they did a pretty good job of replenishing some of the cupboards by raiding the NCAA in Europe. I think they've got some promising stuff in Quinn Hudson and Szymanski, and those I think those guys are legitimately going to make the NHL at some point. Jarventi pulling Jarventi out of Ottawa. I think if his knee holds, I think there's a really good chance that there's an NHL player there too. But the reality is they have burnt both ends of the candle for multiple seasons now, and they're kind of in a tough spot.
Yeah,
Um,
it can't keep on this way forever. So like this is that year where they need to take a breath and just relax.
I want to talk about some stranger's comment here, because I actually have a theory, and it may be a bit of a hot take, but they haven't extended Kulak. Pretty clear they're letting him go. I wonder if Brett Kulak knows that, even if without having had the conversation with the team, and I wonder if that's driving some of the on ice results. Because
Could be.
it's really hard to keep your focus when you don't know what your future is. And I get that a lot of guys play well under that, but I don't know. I'm just speculating that maybe there's something else going on there, because the results we've seen from Brett have been atypically bad as far as he's concerned. He may be $2.75 million, but he's sure as hell reliable for it normally. And to see him struggle as much as he has this year has been really just unfortunate, because such a good and exciting player to watch. Excellent skater, great puck mover, very strong on the puck defensively. Like there's lots of things to like about Brett Kulak's game, especially for his dollar value. I just think there's no room for him in the org right now, and they're probably going to look to shed that contract just to make some space for something else.
Yeah, if nothing else, just a new look. But it was a luxury to have Kulak on your third pairing. 2.75 was always a little expensive for a third line pair or third pairing D. And he's been great up until this last month. He'd been a fantastic Oiler, but I think the writing's on the wall with those two extensions with to Wallman and Ekholm. and he's a UFA after the season. So I think you're probably right. There might be something to that. He sees the writing on the wall, and maybe it's getting to him a little bit. And part of it is just being drugged down by the general malaise around the team. Like it's when the team's not doing well, it's hard to step up as an individual. Like it's really hard to climb out of it. And we've seen lots of these stretches with the Oilers before where they're terrible for 3 weeks, a month, 6 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And it's stretched a little longer this time. And yeah, we all think the roster's a little bit weaker. But to your point, I still think even given the current roster, they could still climb their way into a playoff spot.
Oh, I don't think the playoffs are what we're concerned about at this point. Like if they totally implode, sure, maybe they end up being the Vegas of the year before they won the cup and they they just swing and miss completely and then they retool in the off season. That's possible. I guess there's anything is possible, but I just don't see this team being a team that misses the playoffs, even if they recognize the need to get better. Um, do they see bringing Vinny DeHarnay back? Well, I personally, as a Vinny DeHarnay lover, would love that. I have a jersey of his in the other room, but uh, he turned my understanding, and for what take that for what it's worth, my understanding is he turned down a fairly lengthy term, low dollar option from the Oilers to take the deal that he did in Vancouver. I would be surprised to see him back. He has some puck movement stuff that plagues his game a little bit just because he's such a big and lanky dude. He panics a little bit under pressure sometimes, and I don't know if that's without especially without Paul Coffey present. I don't know if that's the right fit for this org. As much as I would love to see it.
Vinny was a great story when he was here, and it was cool to watch his ascension and to see him get his chance and to get that contract that he did. That was good for him. But yeah, I don't think he's what we need right now. I I want to see someone with a little bit more puck moving. Like Alec Regula is kind of just like a step above Desharnais for me right now, but Regula is still young and has a lot more potential than what Desharnais has. So like I'm happy with that situation. Like if we're gonna move Kulak and upgrade somebody on the right side, like Emberson and Regula can be 6'7", and we need someone on that second pairing side. Ideally, someone somewhat young and that can move a puck, and that's somewhat mobile.
So what you're telling me is that after all this time, is we still need a winger, two right-handed defensemen, and a goalie.
I get that, but every team needs those things. No team is ever going to say that they don't need
I feel
those
like we've
things.
had this conversation before over several seasons.
Yeah, and I mean, right hand D has been a difficult thing for the Oilers to find, and we've been through a few of them. Like we got Bouchard, we've got the prized one, the game breaking one. I just think we need another one that's kind of middle of the road.
Yeah, not Fred Durst. We covered this a little bit ago, but we can definitely touch on this again for just a moment. I definitely think that it's likely that Kulak is contract ballast in the other direction, if that makes sense, to make the money work. If they're going to try and swing on a a Binnington or a Tristan Jari type. I think he may end up being a cap casualty no matter what. Again, his roster spot is somewhat opaque. If they can find a way to find a right-handed defenseman that fills that second pairing role, I would say that it's pretty obvious that Kulak's the odd man out just because of what he makes versus what his position is.
And I would agree with that. And I don't think they do anything with Kulak until Jake Wallman is back at the very least, because they got nobody behind those guys right now. So like, if you think he's going to be part of this goalie trade that we all hope happens tomorrow, then I don't think that's going to be the case. Like if I was manager, I would strongly consider moving Kulak just to get the asset and the cap space to do other things.
Yeah.
I don't think this team's going to do that though, because I still think that there's a desire internally to make a push, make a run, and go for it. You don't do that by trading away quality roster pieces.
No.
But at the same time, you got to give to get, and the cap's got to work somehow. So that's kind of why I'm thinking it makes sense to go for a diamond in the rough goaltender who's ready to pounce but hasn't yet, like a Bloomquist or a DiPietro or a Dawes. All of those I think are decent options. Uh, DiPietro, sorry, Blomqvist has the most NHL experience of those three, if I recall correctly. So I'd probably lean that way, especially if Pittsburgh's anxious to do something because they have four guys. But I'd think it makes more sense to do something like that. It's cheap, maybe a mid-round pick at most,
Yeah.
under $1 million cap hit that you can work with that.
Yeah, the Wallman thing, I actually want to touch on that for a second because I know even I was pretty stoked about the contract. It's just in terms of the length, but I've been considering that since then. And looking at his record, he's never played more than 65 games in his entire career. So I do have some longevity concerns there. I hope that he's able to get healthy and stay healthy at some point. It's pretty clear that he's got some foot things that have been bothering him, and then that got re-aggravated again with that gnarly hit the other night and the shot block. I think there was a shot block involved there too. So hopefully he's not out for long and he's just a little bit bruised up and needs some time to get going again. But we really could use him right now because this team um, is struggling to move the puck well, and he is part of that solution for sure.
Yeah, and as much as we all want these trades to happen yesterday or tomorrow, right? I think the reality is the Oilers need some bodies just so they can
Yep.
afford to do. Hey, you don't want to trade an injured guy away. What team wants to trade for an injured guy? I suppose the Oilers did it with Frederick last year, but it's not ideal. But if you're going to trade someone like a Kulak away, you've got to have someone to go in the lineup to replace them. That's Wallman right now, so like that's not going to happen.
I heard a damning quote from one of the analysts the other day, which was something to like Frederick was more of trending towards a PTO rather than an 8-year contract from where I was sitting, and I'm not sure if it was Friedman or who it was, but it was a pretty. I want that guy to just like make us shut up so bad. I really want him to just like step into his element and be a mean bastard and you know really prove that paycheck. I got a gut feeling that isn't a good one about that situation. And I so badly want to be proven wrong. And I hope he does it. I need to see some evidence that there's still a player there.
Yeah, we could probably do a whole other pod on Frederick alone because we both have some opinions on on Frederick. But it was always a reach for me to like. I didn't want to spend the second round pick on him. I was disgusted at that price for him for a guy that scored 18 goals twice. He was 2 years removed from that. Right, he was playing poorly in Boston before the ankle injury.
Yep.
And then it was worse after the ankle injury, and it hasn't gotten any better this year so far. I'll give him credit for the last couple of games here. Like he's been more involved physically, and he's been a little more noticeable. Nice to see him get a goal against Tampa. And I mean, for 3.85 over 8 years, I want to see this guy work out. Right? I'm just
Yeah.
not fully convinced he's going to. Like I
I,
don't think he's what Bowman expects.
I don't understand these overpays, is what I don't understand. Like when you have limited assets, and I get, again, we have $18 million with a cap. There's 16 players signed, so there's some room to get to the end of the line, including no goalies. To be fair, I don't expect that goaltending situation will hold at no goalies by the end of the season, especially with how they're playing. But there's some money to be spent there, and there's some players to acquire next year. But they got to kind of figure out how to get going this year now. And Frederick, I really hope is a part of that because that 3.8 million is a considerable chunk. I think what people are most surprised about was both the value or the average value and the term. Like, I think people were hoping that if we're going to give a guy 8 years, that he takes the Mayfield contract, or that you give him less term and a little bit more money to make it work. But getting fleeced on both of them is just, it's not a good look, and it's been happening quite a bit too much for my taste. Always with power forwards too. Every time. It's always power forwards that gets this team.
Yeah. There's one in 2016 who I don't need to name that really didn't work out for us. But it's hard to say. Like any of these free agents, it doesn't have to be a power forward. It's just guys that come to the Oilers, their offense just plummets. And I remember doing a piece on this in my when I was doing my first blog before I ever got with heavy hockey. It was just the Oilers are where bottom six offense goes to die. Like anyone new that comes to join us usually suffers. And this goes all the way back to the decade of darkness, like even just after the '06 run. Like I did a whole piece on it. Like it was just ridiculous. Like guys' points per game the year before they joined us versus when they joined us, and then even after they joined us or after they left. It was always the worst with us.
Yeah, there's some organizational shit there that drives me mental. Like, you got to give those guys latitude, and I think we saw that happen with like Derek Ryan's a pretty good example. Like, we got the new coach. He's like comes out and says to the media, "Yeah, I actually have a role now," and then for a fourth liner, did okay for that season. Right? And that was, the bottom 6, I think, was the most productive that year than it's been in years. And, like, yeah, some of these guys are plugs a little bit, but surely they can do more than we can let them do more and set them up for success to do more, because we've had so many guys come into this team and then be utter shit and then just leave to go somewhere else and all of a sudden be prime Wayne Gretzky for a season. Like, it's so infuriating to watch.
Yeah, like Fogel and Holloway last year, Broberg, and a lot of those guys have kind of fallen
The
off a little bit
dude,
this year.
the
That's
Broberg
all.
the Broberg thing still, and I'm not saying that we should have retained Broberg. He asked for a trade. We should have given him a friggin' trade right then and there, because setting that up so that he could go and be an all-star in the playoffs and then get offer sheeted because people saw what he actually was and not what the Oilers thought he was so frustrating. But like, the Broberg thing irritates me. The Holloway thing irritates me. Like, those were avoidable mistakes that cost us assets. And yeah, we got something in return, but nothing close to what we'd invested into them in time or energy or whatever. It was a pretty serious mistake on the org's part.
Yeah, and the mistake was not making room for them.
Yeah,
Like
no, sorry, and
if he goes back further than just not giving him the trade rate when you said like that would have been
yeah,
a good way to handle the trade request, but you had this kid who had all this potential. Play him,
yeah.
right? It just you got to make a spot for him like they did with Savoy this year, and
Well, and they plugged it up with no move contracts, right? Like, so
I mean his last year or I can't remember what year this was now, but it was Ryan Murray. That whole situation still pisses me off. You tell Broberg that it's his spot to lose in the summer, then you go out and sign Ryan Murray in September, like a week before camp. Murray gets a spot out of the camp, plays 13 games, and then his NHL career is over. They even gave Marcus Niemelainen a spot on the roster over Broberg that year for
oh,
whatever reason I'll never understand. And
I
then Broberg
perfectly
hurts himself.
I perfectly understand why Darren Ferris did what he is. He's a ruthless snake, but you cannot for a second tell me that he doesn't advocate for his players. I mean, ruthless snake in the most like agent friendly way. He does exactly what he's supposed to. He viciously advocates for his players, and good on him for that. Because Broberg got absolutely screwed by this organization. Whether it was Murray or they signed Kulak to a 4-year deal, and then they traded for Ekholm, and then they also had Nurse signed until the heat death of the universe. And where is a left-handed defenseman going to fit in with those 3 contracts? They should have moved him at that point, but again, they didn't know what they had, and by the time, what really facilitated that trade request was they got to December, and he had sat in the press box for like 6 weeks, and he'd had enough of that. Like, it was such a brutal mismanagement.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And eh, yeah, I still think Broberg should be here, right? Same with Holloway. Like we'd be, I think we'd be having a much different conversation if the organization would have just done the right thing and developed their players properly and not had such an instant gratification mindset. But here we are.
Yeah, and Broberg, like, he's very clearly a special player. I don't think he should still be here, and I think that's just because the organization burned that bridge. If I'm being completely honest, at least that's as a complete outsider, that's my perspective. Is that the org bungled it some more, and then bungles it some more still, and then all of a sudden they expected him to just be cool with that. And I really understand why he wanted to move on and why he wanted a different look. And I think they should have given it to him sooner and gotten more in return for it.
Absolutely. So we are an hour and 15 into this, and we were thinking of going a little shorter tonight, just because it's a rough situation out there right now. And there's only two of us on the show tonight, but we'll look ahead to what we think is going to happen over the next couple of weeks with this team, and what do we think is going to happen on Saturday with Nugent Hopkins and Kapanen coming back. Let's start there. Nugent Hopkins and Kapanen are likely back on Saturday. Nuge for sure, Kapanen likely, but we'll see who's coming out of the lineup for these guys.
Depends. It sounds like Trent Frederick is hurt. I don't know how they're going to make the cap magic. I think there's a non-zero chance that they have to send Tomasek to the minors just to make the cap work. Um, That's gonna be a tough situation, unless they can put one of the guys on LTIR that, just got hurt. It didn't sound like Wallman was gonna be out any real length of time, but we all know how reliable the injury reports have been around here this season. They're gonna have to make a decision if that fits or not, with either of those guys if they need Elter. Because if they do, um, that solves the problem. Again, we kick the can down the road some more, but if they can't, then they're going to have to send someone out to make the cap work.
Yeah, we've been having these conversations. Who's going to be the guy to go down when so and so comes back off LTIR all season? Because someone's been hurt all season. And, like we've had multiple guys hurt all year. So I think injuries have definitely played a role in everything we've seen so far. But everything you said there is right. Tomashik has to go down if Kapanen's going to play. That's just the way it is. Or they trade someone else out, right? But that's the easy move. Tomashik down. That gets Kapanen activated. Um, you know, block shot could be a bruise or it could be a break. If it's a break, that's a long term injury. So that's a situation where no one has to go down then. Uh, you nailed it with Wallman. It's supposed to be like a week, but we all know what that means so
He
far.
only
What
said,
that
I
has meant.
actually even think he said it was only going to be a game or two, and I know Wallman has taken longer to heal in the past than other guys. I hope that timeline is true, but if
Yeah,
it's going
and
to
a
get
game or
anything
two is a
close
week
to, yeah, but
this week anyway.
if they get any closer to that 10 game marker, then I think they should just bite the bullet if they know where it's at.
For sure. So I mean, I'm excited to see this team with Nugent Hopkins and Kapanen in it. Like even Philp and Lazard, yeah, it'd be nice to have them back, but I view them as extras. They should be the extra forwards on this team at full health. But once we get Nuge and Kapanen back and Frederick too, I guess that's our team at full strength, and that's what I really want to see. So I'm hoping to get a glimpse of that on Saturday, and hopefully we can pull out a big win in Seattle.
What do you think?
Next,
What do you think the chances are they're going to make a move by Saturday?
Slim.
Really?
I know there's lots of noise right now and there's lots of pressure after this loss. I just with the injuries where they are right now, I think they need to get a little bit more healthy. And I think they need to play this homestand out. They have a 5 game stretch or a 5 game stretch where they can have some practice days and they don't have to travel. So I think once those excuses come off the books, then we'll see where they're at.
I just don't
But
want them to
after
do
that,
anything dumb. That's sort of the
that's
thing. That's the thing that I'm really concerned about is that they're gonna do something dumb like ship Nuge out or something really more harmful than helpful. So I really
and
hope that
that's
that isn't
panic.
the case, but you know, it's about assuaging the fan base's panic to actually get through it long enough, so that people aren't jerseying the ice every game.
Yeah, and I hope we don't get to that point, and I don't think we will, just because I think as of now, like, we just got back from a 7 game trip. I personally think this is essentially a 9 game trip because you got 9 games in 9 different cities. One of those happens to be Edmonton, but it was a 1 game pit stop, and they're off to Seattle for Saturday. But once that settles down, they get to sleep in their own beds for an extended period of time, and that they get that 5 game homestand in there. I'm curious to see where this team stands after that, and like I think that's part of the reason why all the reports were like, the Oilers are gonna take another month here and just see where they're at. I think they acknowledge the travel and the realities of the schedule. Uh, it's not an excuse, but it's a reality.
They were
So
worried
I
about
think
that in the off season, hey? Like they even
they
in
knew
the
it was coming.
yeah, like I think they even showed it in one of the videos when the schedule dropped and they showed I think it was Knobloch. Maybe that was last season's, but just flipping through it and basically going, "Damn it." Like
I
they
remember
knew
that.
they knew what was up, right? And they knew it wasn't going to be great. But I don't know. Hopefully they can, like you said, hopefully they can actually get some practice time because they haven't actually practiced before. What was it, yesterday or the day before, in like a few weeks, in terms of like non-game day skates. So I'm hopeful
Yeah,
that
and
they can get something going from that.
you're talking about we're talking about tuning the coach out, have the guys just quit on the coach. It's real hard to do anything about a situation where you can't practice,
Yeah.
right? Part of it's travel, but it's a condensed schedule with the Olympics coming up. Like, how do you make changes,
Maybe
right? Like,
asterisk, maybe the Olympics coming up.
yeah, maybe. uh, like you can only yell and scream at guys so much. You can only go over film so much. You can explain the same concepts on film, and then the guys are just like, "Yeah, I get it, I get it." So maybe that is tuning the coach out. But like, what other tools do you have if you can't get on the ice and actually practice it? And so I'm excited to see what Knobloch will do 5-on-5 here. He said he's going to make some tweaks, and I saw a couple little breakout plays that I hadn't seen yet this season, but they weren't working consistently, and they weren't doing it consistently. That'll take some time to evolve. That'll take several practices to get a handle on, and we might see more added. I don't know what else they've got up their sleeve, so I'm curious to see how that goes. But yeah, I don't see any major move happening before the end of the week here.
Well, we'll see. I know there's a lot of smoke, and maybe the smoke is about sending a message to their existing guys to, get to it. Really seems like there's a lot of smoke here, and there usually isn't as much smoke as we've seen in the past 2 days unless there's actually something to it. So we'll see if it sounds like they're trying, and it may materialize, and it may not. Um, as goalie trades or trades in general tend to with this team. Got an interesting tidbit here from Edmonton Oilerlytics here off my other screen. Um, Last 3 seasons combined, let's look at Bennington, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, uh, Elvis Merlikins, and Tristan Jarry. So expected goals against divided by actual goals against to give you a rating of, how many goals per expected goal. Um, Bennington is at plus 13.5. UPL is at minus 5.5. Elvis is at minus 12.8. Mind you, Columbus was horrible for a while. And Jari is at minus zero point zero 0.04. And Pittsburgh hasn't exactly been a fabulous place to play, at least last season. So, um,
Uh-huh.
the Bennington's pretty clearly the leader of that group of four. But I would say it's also safe to say that Bennington's probably played on the best team of those three teams as well.
That's totally fair. And like the Blues have had their stretches where they've been terrible too. Right? They were near last place most of the last season before they got hot, right?
Yep.
Um, I mean, yeah, Bennington's been rough this year. Uh, I still don't think that's the right move. I just don't. 32
No,
years old, most expensive of the bunch. Uh,
I understand why he's getting so much credibility, but I also think that um, looking at the DiPietros and the Daws and the Casas and the whoever else, like see if you can pry somebody who's at the cusp of their NHL breakthrough um, out of another org and see if we can make that work. I think is probably a better strategy for asset rationalization, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's what they have to do at this point if they're going to do anything at all. And I think it's been bad enough where even I'm saying I feel like they have to do something. Like
Yeah,
I'm Mr. Patience, right? So if I'm saying they got to do something,
yeah,
it's bad. Um, I thought I talked myself into carrying three goaltenders earlier in the show. I think you get yourself a cheap one and you can keep the other two for the rest of the season here. Let them fight.
yep.
Let them fight for their ice time.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I don't. I'm disappointed that they didn't pick one of Dawes or DiPietro off of waivers that both of those guys cleared. And DiPietro was the favorite for a while. Um, I don't know what they thought of him internally, but it sure seemed like externally from the people that I've talked to that there was a lot of people watching that waiver transaction with, you know, wringing hands, and then nothing materialized out of it. So that was a little disappointing.
I'm a bit surprised that nobody claimed him.
Yep.
Not just us, just anybody. So we
No,
got. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say let's. I think we're getting to the end of this. These
Yeah,
lovely
that's
folks have
where I was going
listened
to.
to us for 90 minutes now, so this is probably a good time to tie it off unless anybody has some last minute questions.
I mean, we'll just do quick final thoughts and if there's anything you didn't get a chance to say during the show, anything else on your mind, anything you got coming up in the next little while here. So yeah, go ahead, give us that, and I'll finish us off here.
Don't really have any more passing thoughts. This team is they're just going to have to work through it. They don't have a ton of assets to spend here. Not certainly not without uh, certainly not without losing something of value the other direction. Um, who do we think gets the start, assuming no trade for of Skinner or Pickard on Saturday? Who are we playing on Saturday? Seattle?
Seattle, tough
Probably
one.
Skinner. Probably Skinner.
It's not as if Skinner's tired. He only played one period.
To be fair, though, he played several in a row. When was the last time Pickard played before?
Tampa.
Was it Tampa? Okay. Yeah, he might have saved his job with that Tampa performance, to be
Yeah, he
honest with
might have.
you. Um, 50-50. I think you could make a case for why Pickard should do it. You could make a case for why they would have Skinner do it. Um, I'm definitely getting a little bit sick of the org saying we need more time to assess because we're assessing the same situation that we've been in for 2 years now. Um, I really hope that they're reaching some conclusions and fairly rapidly that don't completely empty the cupboards. Um, I'm gonna go with Skinner because it's Decord probably against us, and that guy always gives us fits.
Yeah, and Skinner's probably where I would go as well. Like Skinner's obviously your number one out of these two that we have here, and he's been your better guy the last this season as well. Had a rough start. You give him a chance to rebound here, put that rebound ability of his to the test. So I'm going Skinner as well. But I think Kevin and I are in agreement on we don't want to see a panic move here. There's lots of pressure coming from all sorts of places. Expectations are sky high as always with this team because of who we have on our roster and where we've been the last 2 years. But I think the prudent move is to just chill, right?
Mhm.
Uh, Go get your spend a mid round pick, get a guy who's waiting to come out of his AHL hibernation and emerge onto the NHL scene, break out, if you will, and go with that. But that's as big of a move as I want to see. It's not just about this year. It's about next year and the year after that with McDavid, and it's about doing what you need to do to retain McDavid beyond those years. And that is fortifying the prospect pipeline, and that is making the team younger and faster. You don't do that by spending a bunch of assets to go get 32-year-old goaltenders in the middle of
Or
the season
35-year wingers.
or 35-year-old wingers, right?
Corey
As
Perry being the obvious exception to that one because that dude like transcends space time or something. Like I don't get it.
yeah, he's an anomaly for sure. Yeah, sure, it'd be cool to have him back, but I just don't see it happening. But I'm looking at what the team could look like next year, right? We want Savoy to evolve into a top six winger, so let's not block him like we did to Broberg by going out and getting Kulak and Ryan Murray because we're trying to win right this second. Let's actually create a space for Savoy even next year in the top six. And you got Ike Howard, right? A lot of people were thinking he should have been on the top line this year. If you go out and get
Yeah,
another top
see,
six forward before this winger before this season ends, where's Howard going to fit in that top six? He
no, he
doesn't.
becomes a trade pawn at that point, and then you send the wrong message to all the talent that you're hiring. That we're just gonna sign you and then trade you when it's convenient for us. So I really think that they're gonna avoid moving those assets unless they absolutely have to. I wouldn't be super surprised to see Thomasek get shipped. I think he's the weakest of the bunch, and that's not a slight against him because he's a pretty clever player, but it's just not really it hasn't been as effective here as we would have liked. And we
Oh, that
do,
would be smart.
we do need to make space for Ike Howard. I think that this season he'll see a lot of AHL time. That's good for him. I don't want him playing 6 minutes a night. I want him playing 26 minutes a night, right? Like,
Yeah, 100%. They're doing the right thing with him right now, but
yeah,
like our actions right now impact the future,
yeah.
right? And the
Imagine
future
that,
matters.
right?
Imagine
Yeah.
that as I
And it's regular
you're
season.
watching.
It's regular season in November, right? Like this
Yeah,
is the time to play these guys.
yeah, and like it's just we don't want to make the Wallstedt mistake again. We don't want to make the Holloway and the Broberg mistake again. We can't. You can't afford to make those kinds of mistakes again. And those come from instant gratification mindsets. And that's where we're at right now. And that's always amplified because we have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on our team. But we need to think long term right now. We're transitioning. We have a somewhat new GM who's putting his stamp on this team. So that stamp can't be panic. It can't be. Even
No.
if it means we miss the playoffs this season, to be quite honest, I don't care. I would love to see us make the playoffs and go on a deep run, but yeah, it'll suck if we miss the playoffs. But like more time for their boys to rest and heal up for next season. That's where I'm at. I don't think it's necessary to do any big moves and no big panic moves right now. So
Yep.
I've said what I needed to say there. Kev, anything else?
No, I think we'll send these lovely folks on their way. Thanks for joining and listening and watching us this evening. I know we were a little bit lighter staffed. We've had a couple of guys that had other engagements tonight, so we decided to just roll with the two of us. Thank you very much for watching, and I will let Ryan send us off.
And yes, to echo what Kevin said, thanks for tuning in, everyone, and have a good night.